Hello, BookTube. I've got some mail for you. A bit of mail that came first thing this morning. It is a overcast and very sticky, very humid day. I have a feeling that weather is on the way. We had very boisterous lightning storms last night, accompanied by a little bit of rain, and the lightning wasn't the really mean business kind. It was mainly a light show in the sky. I have a feeling that if we get weather out of the weather that we're having today, if we get precipitation or lightning storms again out of this weather, it'll be a little more substantial. The air feels unsettled and pregnant. And the forecasts are all saying that tomorrow will be 30 degrees cooler. And the day after that, almost 40 degrees cooler. So something might be happening. But one way or another, it's infinitely more comfortable even today than it was yesterday for the little bean, for the tiny little bean. And it's the first day of July. The month commences. This is Jane Austen July here on BookTube. I was eavesdropping. I was butting into a Voxer conversation the other night, and somebody reminded me that it was going to be Jane Austen July, a venerable BookTube event where we concentrate on Jane Austen's writings for the month of July. And when I learned that the other night, I thought, oh, well, I know what I want to do. I want to reread Pride and Prejudice, even though I have read Pride and Prejudice I don't know how many times, and would easily benefit from reading any other Jane Austen book. Instead, I decided that, and I took down from the shelf that big Penguin Classic Deluxe collected novels of Jane Austen. I don't always feel like reading a book in that big volume, but I did this time around. It's a lovely thing. And I fell to Pride and Prejudice and finished it this morning. So I need a Jane Austen to do for July, and I think it will be Persuasion. I think I will read Persuasion for July. But July is also July is also the month for a BookTube adjacent event, which is Camp NaNoWriMo. NaNoWriMo itself is National Novel Writing Month, where every November hundreds of thousands of people get together to do the flagrantly insane task of writing 50,000 words of the first draft of a novel in the month of November, 1,667 words a day, to get to 50,000 by the end of the month. But NaNoWriMo has been so popular that it has spin-off events, and one of them is Camp NaNoWriMo every July, where you do the same thing. You have the same wonderful sense of community, of having other people writing with you, but you don't have that 50,000 word goal. You can set your own writing goal, and you can set your own writing project. It doesn't have to be, for instance, in the strict observance of the rules of NaNoWriMo, which you don't have to do. It should be a brand new project. Whereas with Camp NaNoWriMo, it can be anything. And also, NaNoWriMo itself wants to be fiction, whereas Camp NaNoWriMo can be anything. One of their concentrations this year is on memoir writing. And the last time there was a spin-off NaNoWriMo event, I started a story called The Voyage of the Argo, about a Boston newspaper. I have participated in so many NaNoWriMo events. I love them. Absolutely love the weird phenomenon of NaNoWriMo in all of its guises, in all of its different months. And The Voyage of the Argo was the first NaNoWriMo project I have ever started that I failed, where I got just so far into the story and then stopped. I had a good reason. I had a period where I could barely sit up in bed, much less write prose, much less do anything. There was a period where I was feeling really, really poorly. I don't think that's a good enough reason. Certainly, there are books on my shelves that were written by people and then shepherded through the press by people who felt a lot worse than I did. But one way or another, that project just sits there like an embarrassment on my roster. So sometime later today, I am going to launch a new project for Camp NaNoWriMo, July 2021, and just hope that it erases for me the little blot of a failed story. So that's a couple of things for July. But we also have mail, the ostensible purpose of this video. And the first thing is a periodical, The New Yorker. This is the July 5th issue with fireworks going off. There you have one roof in New York sharing celebration with another roof in New York. Very lovely scene. This cover is by R. Kikuo Johnson, and it's called Shared Celebration. and I liked it very much. And there were other things in here that I liked as well. Let's do a little walkthrough of this New Yorker, which did not get to me in the best possible shape. But I have a feeling if it had come much later, it would have got to me soaking wet, as many New Yorkers have. I think it's going to rain today. But there were a couple of things that I wanted to mention here. Yes, Rebecca Mead has never really written a book that does it for me. She does a book here on narrowly on what does the line say? How did a cockatoo from remote Australasia end up in a Renaissance painting? And sure enough, there is a cockatoo in that painting right up there. And narrowly, the article is about that, is about how a Renaissance painter would even know that such a creature exists, and much less what it looks like. But the article more broadly talks about cockatoos and parrots and what they're like. Parrots are the nearest birds come to being little human beings wrapped in feathers, says the former director of the Barber Institute of Fine Arts in Birmingham. The Greeks prized the beauty and the intelligence of parrots from India, which had established overland trade routes with Europe in antiquity. Aristotle remarked that the birds were good mimics and noted that they were even more outrageous after drinking wine. I thought that was kind of funny. I have known a couple of parrots in my day. I've never actually spent any time with a cockatoo, but I had occasion to spend a couple of weeks with a parrot, a great big, fairly old. I think this parrot was 41 years old when I knew her. I had occasion to spend time with her, and it was unsettling. It was deeply unsettling. If you have never met a cockatoo or a parrot, if you think that it's kind of a cute, funny game that they repeat words without understanding them, spending time around them dispels that notion and replaces it with something far more disturbing, which is that they are repeating words without understanding them, but they do understand what they're doing. There's an almost human-level intelligence behind those eyes, behind what's going on. In fact, I would almost dispense with the almost. The same thing is also true. The same thing is also true with ravens. I spent a couple of weeks with a big parrot in an opulent household, but I've spent a great deal of time. A friend of mine has had ravens as house guests. She and I both resist the idea of calling them house pets. They could fly out the window tomorrow and make a perfect living. House guests, though, people who stay in the house and stick around. And I've spent a great deal of time in the countryside outside of Leeds in that old house with ravens. And oh my God, it is so alarming. It is so disturbing to be present with an animal that is that intelligent, as smart as you are, along such eerily similar lines as you, but still alien. Oh my. There's very little that ravens don't understand. But anyway, we go on from there to an article by Paige Williams on the murder of Kyle Rittenhouse, who, as far as I know, is not only free, but also the honorary mayor of his town for killing people with a rifle. Very disturbing article to read. There's a New Yorker cartoon that misses the bill here. I like New Yorker cartoons. I think they speak a language of their own, and when they are on, they are wonderful. This is one New Yorker cartoon from this issue. A man is bowling on his roof. We'll leave out for the minute that the perspectives are all wrong. This is basically a crude line drawing. And, you stare at it and you think, okay, it's not very funny. I mean, why would anyone bowl on the roof? Then you realize it's to make a play on the words of gutter. The gutter in a bowling alley is this row on either side of the aisle, and these things that collect rainwater and debris from the roof of a house are also called a gutter. And that is it. That is the joke. So it's a little bit on the disappointing side. And of course, I also looked at the poetry in this issue and did not like what I saw. I want to read you an example of that. This is by Adam Zagajewski, who died in 2021. This is translated from the Polish by Claire Kavanaugh, and it's called Boogie Woogie. You shout from the other room. You ask me how to spell Boogie Woogie, and I instantly think, what luck no war has been declared, no fire has consumed our city's monuments, our buildings, our bodies, our dwellings. The river didn't flood, no friends have been arrested. It's only Boogie Woogie I sigh relieved and say it's spelled just like it sounds, boogie woogie. And I thought, okay, well, allowing here for all of the vagaries of translation imaginable, that is not only not a poem, it's not only is it not punctuated, but it's just a thought. That's all. It's a funny little anecdote that you tell at parties. There's nothing to make it a poem. There's no form to it at all. Not just the loosey-goosey form of the 21st century, but none at all. It is just prose with an altitude sickness. It's prose in an upright and locked condition. It's not poetry in any way. And also, aside from that, it's also dumb. Really, really dumb. The point being made, the crapulous old guy with pants up to his sternum, point being made, that, oh, isn't it lucky we don't have anything major to complain about? We don't have anything to worry about except how to spell boogie woogie. First of all, it's not spelled like it sounds. It can be spelled many different ways. If you were to guess from hearing it, not knowing the word at all, how to spell it, you probably wouldn't spell it the way it is actually spelled. But also, what is that point supposed to make? What is that dumb old man point supposed to be? That if there were a war, you wouldn't have any trivial interests, you wouldn't have any trivial questions. It would only be, where is the enemy today? How far are they advanced on the border? It wouldn't be, do you think the stall down the street has fresh apples? Is that the point that's supposed to be being made here? That isn't it lucky that we have nothing else to concern ourselves when the person asking the question from the other room is not concerned? They're momentarily curious. It's just a dumb old man thing. It's an old man joke. This is a little anecdote I tell to other people to show how skewed your priorities are. And yes, it makes you look like the butt of a joke in front of a whole bunch of people, and it's kind of cruel and stupid, and also pointless, because I've asked many pointless questions in my life, but I'm going to do it anyway, because I'm just familiar with telling this story. It was not a good poetry outing for the New Yorker. But there was a cartoon that I think a lot of you cat people will identify with. Where the minute the chair is abandoned, it becomes occupied. I see enough social media, I see enough Twitter to know that this is an endemic problem with cats. I think it's funny. But then we also have mail. We have 3 packages, and it looks like they're all from publishers. So we're not going to be getting an unauthorized shipment of Remembrance of Things Past this time around. Okay, so this first one is 2 books. Let's see here. Let's see what the first one is. Oh, okay. All right, so this comes out... when do you come out? You come out in October. This comes out in early October, and this is called Old Poets, Reminiscences and Opinions by Donald Hall. Talking of poetry. Donald Hall knew a great deal about work, about poetry, and about age. Each of those things comes together in this unique collection. These essays are both intimate portraits and learned treatises. We hear about Robert Frost as Hall knew him, vain and cruel, a man possessed by guilt. But also, the poet who survives is the poet to celebrate. The human being who confronts darkness and defeats it is the one to admire. If that ever happened in the poetry of Robert Frost, I might agree. Hall takes us on a pub crawl through the Welsh countryside with the word-mad Dylan Thomas, to the Faber and Favor office of T.S. Eliot, who had discovered more happiness in age than in youth, to the classrooms of the unfailingly kind Archibald MacLeish, from whom he learned the most about poetry, to Brooklyn for lunch with the enigmatic Marianne Moore, and to Italy for a visit with the notorious Ezra Pound. Along the way are observations about other poets and literary cultures that sustained them: Elizabeth Bishop, Robert Bly, Hart Crane, E.E. Cummings, H.D., Wyndham Lewis, Wallace Stevens, Alan Tate, Richard Wilbur, God help us all, William Carlos Williams, W. Yeats, and many others. Okay, so Robert Hall died in 2018, and now we get a collection of his reminiscences. No idea from that pub sheet. I'm not sure this will tell me either. No idea if, I'm assuming that these were all published elsewhere. Portions of this book appeared previously in Commentary, Lear's, the Paris Review, and American Poetry Review. Okay, so a collection of his poetry reminiscences. Don't have to deal with it for right now. And then this next one also comes out in early October, and this is for you philosophy people. This is by Ward Farnsworth, and it is called The Socratic Method, A Practitioner's Handbook. A Thinking Person's Guide to a Better Life. It's going to be navel-gazing. All philosophical, all cod philosophy inquiries into a better life are always navel-gazing. I can tell you right away, without having any truck with philosophy, that the key to a better life is to look out, not in. Look out, not in. Look around you and see who you can help. See whose life you can make better. Give. Give. There you go. That is a one-word prescription for a more meaningful life. Look outward from yourself. See whose world you can improve. Give. Give of yourself. There you go. But let's see. Let's hear the cod philosophy anyway. Ward Farnsworth, I refuse to believe that's this person's real name, explains what the Socratic method is, how it works, and why it matters more than ever in our time. Easy to grasp, yet challenging to master, the method will change the way you think about life's big questions. How to spell boogie woogie. About 2,500 years ago, Plato wrote a set of dialogues that depict Socrates in conversation. The way Socrates asks questions, and the reasons why, amount to a whole way of thinking. No, they don't. No, they don't. Oh, this is a Socratic method, one of humanity's great achievements. The glue holding this book together is a far greater achievement than the Socratic method. More than a technique, the method is an ethic of patience, inquiry, humility, and doubt. It is an aid to better thinking and a remedy for bad habits of mind, whether in law, politics, the classroom, or tackling life's big questions at the kitchen table. If there is any humility in Plato's depiction of Socrates, I don't know about it. And the reason I don't know about it is because there is none. Drawing on hundreds of quotations, this book explains what the Socratic method is and how to use it. Chapters include Socratic ethics, ignorance, testing principles, and Socrates and the Stoics. God, I knew the Stoics were going to work their way into this somehow. Socratic philosophy is still startling after all these years because it is an approach to asking hard questions and chasing after them. It is a route to wisdom and a way of thinking about wisdom. Okay, all right. This author also wrote a book called The Practicing Stoic. And we have just dealt with Stoicism by looking at the YouTube channel of Ryan Holiday, who's YouTube's foremost Stoic. So who is Ward Farnsworth when he's at home? The dean of the University of Texas School of Law and the author of the Practicing Stoic, as well as the Farnsworth Classical English series. Okay, all right. So this comes out in early October. Godine Press will be trying to prompt me into an anti-Socratic rant. I am more than happy to oblige. It's been a good decade since I went into one, but the book might be good. Let's see what this next one is. Boy, you can definitely tell, right? If you didn't believe my Grandpa Simpson wanderings and my meanderings about the weather, you could certainly tell by this end times lighting that's suddenly happening here. So let's see what this next one. Oh, okay. We go from philosophy to something real and wonderful. Okay, this comes out in early September. This is by Don Holloway, and it is called The Last Viking, The True Story of Harald Hardrada. Incredible. Incredible. The rich and compelling account of the life of King Harald Hardrada of Norway, one of the greatest Viking warriors to have ever lived. The Last Viking tells the dramatic story of King Harald of Norway, one of the greatest warriors to have ever lived. Drawing on original source material, Don Holloway recreates the violence and drama of the late Viking era in a gripping chronicle that transports the readers from the frozen wastelands of Scandinavia to the glittering opulence of the Byzantine Empire, and finally to the muddy fields of rural England. King Harald III, called Hardrada or Hard Ruler, of Norway, was a real-life fantasy hero who burst into history as a teenage youth in a Viking battle, from which he escaped with little more than his life and a thirst for vengeance. Journey with him across the medieval world, from the barren, frozen wastelands of the north to the glittering towers of Byzantium and the passions of the Holy Land. He'll fight for and against Christian, Muslim, and pagan rulers. He'll bed handmaids, a princess, and an empress alike, writing poetry and amassing a fortune along the way before returning home to claim his love, his crown, and his destiny, ultimately dying like a Viking, in battle, laughing, sword in hand. Okay. All right. I am absolutely sold. Absolutely sold. And I shall have to see if Vin at Revenant Reads is interested in this book. He has a sweet tooth for all things Viking. And despite the fact that I've recently learned that he's been conducting massive campaigns of anti-Steve hate behind the scenes, his Discord groups that are entirely devoted to what gross things Steve did today, despite the anti-Steve nature of his channel, I wonder if he might want this advanced copy, and I'll just wait for the finished copy. I can't help but think that he would be interested. I'll have to check and see. So who is Don Holloway when he's at home? Is he part of the anti-Steve Voxer group? One of many anti-Steve Voxer groups? Just because I smell? Don Holloway is an author, illustrator, and historian. He is also a classical rapier fencer and historical reenactor. His writing on aviation, history, and reenacting have appeared in magazines ranging from Aviation History, History Magazine, Military Heritage, Military History, Wild West, and World War II, to Muzzleloader, Renaissance Magazine, and Scientific American. Okay, all right, fine. So he's a historical reenactor. The classical rapier. Quite a bit of training with a single-edged saber. I wonder what that would be like. But one way or another, good Lord, a full-length biography of Harald Hardrada. When's the last time we had one of those in the English language? And let's finish up here with this. This last one's one of these big white envelopes. It probably means a finished copy of some kind. Yes, this is a finished copy of. Let's get you out of there. This is a finished copy. Comes out at the end of July, so it comes out in 3 weeks. Of a book we've seen. We've seen this already. This is the finished copy of Until Proven Safe: The History and Future of Quarantine. By Jeff Mana and Nicola Twilley. When the authors first began researching Until Proven Safe, quarantine seemed to be a relatively specialized topic. As they were doing reporting for this book in the years before COVID-19, the idea that quarantine even still had relevance in our modern world was occasionally met with disbelief. Needless to say, after the past 15 months that we've all just experienced, it is clear that the tool of quarantine is as relevant as ever. And the present seems a perfect moment to reconsider what quarantine actually means, what it is, how it's been used in the past, and how we can use it better in the future. The authors begin their investigation in the Mediterranean, where they visit the homes of the oldest quarantine structures, originally built to protect against the spread of the plague. Following the path of John Howard, the 18th century prison reformer who became interested in the conditions of people kept in quarantine, the authors write about their visits to former lazarettos in Dubrovnik, Malta, Venice. They show how quarantine powers have been abused throughout history, used to lock up immigrants and loose women here in the United States. They also turn their gaze to other types of quarantine and isolation, from the years-long quarantine of cocoa plants in greenhouse facilities outside London to the quarantine of astronauts returned to Earth after their first moon landings. And, of course, they write about more recent events, from Ebola to COVID. They write about a modern federal quarantine facility in Omaha, which they visited not long before its official opening, and where, later on, 15 Americans from the Diamond Princess cruise ship were housed in the early days of the COVID crisis. A reminder here that the authors might not indulge in that the President of the United States at the time wanted them left on the ship whether they lived or died. Because the minute they set foot in America, he thought his numbers would look worse. Pure psychopathy, in other words. Just proudly displayed. In the way that psychopaths do. They will say, yeah, I often think about cutting the eyeballs off kittens. And they won't think anything of it because they're psychopaths. If they were sociopaths, they would hide it. But a pure psychopath just says it out loud. They don't even know that there's anything wrong with it. The authors might not get to that point, but I couldn't let it pass. So who are the authors? Jeff Mana is the author of the New York Times bestselling A Burglar's Guide to the City. I think I read that. I'll have to look it up. As well as the architecture and technology website BLDGBLOG, Build Blog. And he regularly writes for the New York Times Magazine, The Atlantic, The New Yorker, and Wired. I've never written for any of those places. And then the co-author, Nicola Twilley, is a co-host of the podcast Gastropod, which looks at food through the lens of history and science, and is an award-winning contributor to The New Yorker. Okay, great. So those of you who listen to podcasts, I just don't. I just can't warm up to them. I don't know why. I know they're done with the best of intentions. I just can't warm up to them. You can't listen to a podcast while you're reading, is the main thing. You have to listen to it while you're doing something else. You have to listen to it while you're out for a power walk or while you're cooking an elaborate hour-long dinner for your family. I do almost nothing but read. And when I'm out on a walk with Frida, I am talking with Frida. I don't bring obnoxious little headphones or anything like that. It's her walk. It's her walk. So I'm with her, paying attention to her, talking with her about what she's seeing and experiencing, all that sort of thing. So I don't bring headphones out then either. And I don't know that I would probably be a fairly sparing user, but at least an enthusiastic consumer of podcasts if that weren't true. But as it is, I don't have any areas of time that fit the listening to podcasts. But I know that plenty of you do. I know that plenty of you love your podcasts. And you have another one now. Do you know of Gastropod? Nicola Twilley's podcast? Do you know of that one? Is it any good? And if you don't know, give it a try. You've got another podcast to occupy your time. So that is the mail for today. We have Until Proven Safe, the finished copy coming out later this month of a new book about quarantines, what they've always been, whether or not they work. Keep in mind, the early days of COVID-19, there were plenty of people saying it doesn't work. If you look at the numbers, look at the infection numbers, look at the spread. This isn't actually working. This didn't actually work. You shut down things and the virus continued to spread. And then you had counterpoints saying, well, most of the cases where that was true was a result of the location being huge, which means people are still spreading the virus. And if they were to quarantine all of them effectively, it wouldn't spread. One way or another, it's going to be fascinating to look back in history. Then The Last Viking, a new biography of King Harald Hardrada. Incredible. It's just incredible. And then the Socratic Method, Practitioner's Handbook, in case you want to practice the Socratic Method, and Old Poets, Reminiscences and Opinions. So these will be nonfiction autobiographical pieces by the late poet Donald Hall, and the New Yorker with this festive cover. So there you go. That is the mail for today. And we're all over the map as usual, but that's the way I like it. More mail may come today. There are 2 delivery trucks that are still out. They may pass me by, they may not, but one way or another, we might have, like yesterday, a surprise second mail haul. We shall see. In the meantime, I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.